Hi, and welcome to another edition of Libertarian Alternative. It's the program that will teach you about Libertarian Party and what it is that we stand for. My name is Dusty Taylor, and I have with us on our set today, I have Adrian Moore, who is our Vice President of Reason Foundation. Tell us a little bit about the Reason Foundation, what it stands for.
Well, Reason Foundation is it's a nonprofit organization, a libertarian group, and we have two parts of the organization, really. One publishes Reason Magazine, which is a libertarian magazine that covers politics and culture and policy and so forth. And then we have the division that I'm the vice president of that is a research division. We do research on public policy issues, transportation, environment, education, privatization, and so forth, all looking at how to make government smaller and work better.
Yes, and it's quite a foundation. We are actually broadcasting here, taping from the Reason Foundation offices here in Los Angeles, and you have quite a big organization here. We've got lots of offices, got lots of books back here, so you're quite busy. How long has the Reason Foundation been around?
33 years.
Wow, really? Who was it started by?
Bob Poole was one of the original founders of the Reason Foundation, along with Tibor Machan and Manny Klausner.
And he started it because?
It started as the magazine. It was essentially a college publication done out of the garage.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
The old mimeograph machines
Love
and everything.
Those grassroots ground starts.
And it grew from there. Eventually it became a more professional magazine, and then the nonprofit foundation was created to provide the structure for the magazine and to allow us to start doing the public policy research.
I see, I see. And so here we are at the Reason Foundation. I understand you have not just a magazine, but you also have a website.
Yes.
And what is that website?
Reason.org.
Okay, so that's an easy one.
Yes.
That's an easy one.
That gets you into all of the magazine stuff as well as all of our policy research.
Now you're part of the research area, is that correct? Now what is it that you've been researching? We talked a little bit off camera about a couple of big projects that you're actually doing some research on. We'd like to talk about the pension one. What is the other one that you're working on?
Well, we've actually most of us are multitaskers these days. We all have to be, right? So projects that I mentioned the broad areas that we work in. I've been working a lot on transportation issues, especially congestion and air pollution. Ooh. And we talked some about the whole offshore outsourcing and free trade issue. Like usual, whenever issues of trade and changes in the economy come up, there are people who want the government to somehow keep the economy from changing, keep jobs from changing. We're all going to live exactly the same today as we lived yesterday.
And last week and the month before.
We all would love to live the way where we lived 100 years ago.
That change is horrible, isn't it? Change is really hard.
So that's been a big issue. And then the other one, like you say, is the pensions, which has just been a monster because we have cities, counties, and states all around the country who are facing big budget problems because their pensions have got out of control.
Now let's talk about that. You say the pensions have gotten out of control, but it seems to me, just in basic math, that if you have people that are putting into their pension and it's being managed well, that's going to be, when they get to the point where they need to get that pension, it's going to be there plus.
Right.
It should be there plus more. So what is the big issue with the pension these days?
Well, it would be that way if government workers actually paid into their pension systems. See, most of us think of a pension as a piece of what we experience is more like a 401k. Most people these days have what's called a defined contribution plan, which means you put in a certain amount, maybe your company matches that amount or matches part of that amount, and you put in the amount you think you're going to need so that when you retire, you'll have enough in the account.
And that doesn't happen with a pension?
And government has the old style pensions, which are called defined benefit pensions, and some of the big corporations have these. And these are where, basically, when you're hired, you're going to get a pension. And maybe part of your salary is taken out, but the amount is taken out is the same for everyone, and the benefit is the same. In the government, the benefit is based on sort of what you were earning at the end of your career. And the government itself puts in the money out of the budget every year into the pension account to save for paying for all those people who are going to retire in the future. So the workers are completely disconnected for the most part from the system.
But it still should work. I mean, it still
Yes,
should
it
work.
should.
Now, what's the deal, Adrian?
Well, it does actually work. I would say the majority of governments have not got themselves into trouble with the pension systems because they have put enough money into the system to keep it rational and solvent. But an amazing number fall into all those pitfalls that we know happens when, in government management. It's always very tempting when the stock market is doing really well, and so your pension fund is making lots of money from its investments, to not put the money in from the general fund and instead spend that on new government programs. But that comes back to haunt you the next time the economy goes down or the market corrects, and we all know we've been through that lately. And so you had many governments who made a lot of money in their pension systems during the high-tech bubble in the market, and then when the bubble broke and the market adjusted, they found themselves not willing to make the big increases in payments that they needed to.
Yes.
So now they're facing shortfalls, and the question is, well, what are we going to stop doing? Are we going to have to raise taxes? It's appalling how many places are looking at tax increases to pay for these bad decisions they made about their pension system.
And so what are the alternatives? What are the options for these governments if that's happening?
The options are actually pretty tough. I always like those policy areas where it's real obvious what needs to be done. It's just hard to get people to do it.
Yes.
In this case, it's not even that. It's actually hard to figure out what you can do because essentially the pensions are a contract. So when a government worker is hired and he's hired under condition that he's going to get this pension, the government then can't go back 10 years later and say, well, it turns out that cost too much, so you're not going to get that pension after all. It's essentially a contract that they can't breach in that fashion. So reducing the benefits is really hard. But what we can do is we can quit running up the benefits. Part of the reason we have this problem is that when the government gives workers a pay raise, it counts in the budget right now. So they have to actually have the money in the budget to give a pay raise. But if they give a pension increase or a health care increase, that's a future cost. And it doesn't count in the budget right now.
But won't it come back to haunt
Oh yeah,
them?
but that's later.
Oh no, we're still putting it all off again.
They might not even be in office then, so why should they worry about that? So
see.
There's a strong temptation to do that, to underinvest and to increase benefits. And so you've got the situation now where government workers make on average about 25% higher pension benefits than private sector.
I see. And so is this an issue for the private sector at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of companies out there that have the old style pension systems, and they all have this problem.
I see.
And they're very difficult. When the airlines, like United Airlines, recently declared bankruptcy, and one of the things that came out of that was they defaulted on their pension obligations.
Right.
There's a federal government entity called the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation that was set up so that when companies go bankrupt and the people that work for it then lose their pensions, this entity steps in and makes up for at least some of the pension that those people lost.
Okay.
And it comes out of the general taxpayers' money to do that. So the United Airlines bankruptcy passed this huge pension obligation on to the taxpayers.
Great.
Because we made the policy decision a while back that we can't really just let people completely lose their benefits because the corporation they work for happens to go bankrupt. And so what's happening is, it's a stampede in the private sector to go away from old-style pensions and convert to these defined contribution 401k style pensions where you pay in a certain percentage of your salary and that goes into the stock market and then accumulates for your retirement. And you control, the more you put in, the more you're going to have. The less you put in, the less you're going to have. It's up to you to figure out what you're going to do. It's a personal responsibility issue instead of the government responsibility.
Which, as a libertarian, that is exactly what we subscribe to.
Right.
In your research, is that what's happening with the government pensions?
Well, there's a little bit of a trend that